Welcome to Viseland, and this is the second episode of Viseland with live basketball happening in the background, going on where we're at the end. Like the playoffs are kind of near. Blazers are trying to go to the playoffs sometimes, and then sometimes not.
They control their destiny right now, so that's
But,
pretty cool.
but the cool thing is, Damian Lillard has been on a rampage. He just got another 60-point game.
Yeah.
Players to get.
Rampage against teams that have nothing to play for at this point.
Oh, it's like it's like interesting to think
But
of. Like,
he's been amazing.
this,
He has been
when you
amazing.
think about it, consolidated to like 8 games. Like this is it. And most
Yeah.
of the teams have already like done what they need. But players that have had more than 3 60-point games in a season, Wilt Chamberlain? No, 60-point games. 3 60-point games in a season. Wilt Chamberlain, Damian Lillard.
Kobe, the season where he had 81, he had 62. Those were the only two?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
that's
another irrelevant stat. Thank you.
Yeah.
But no, still impressive.
Thank you, Twitter, for always bringing these to the forefront, and then I try to like keep them at a good place in my brain, so I'm ready to pop them out at any given time. But this week we got a good topic that's relevant because like hopefully what we're talking about like is coming to an end soon, and that is one and done.
Yeah. So basically, we wanted to kind of go into why we feel the age limit, or the one and done as it's been called, because so many players just went from high school, did the 1 year of post-grad work in the NCAA, and then went to the NBA.
Some overseas, like some players, like there's
or a little more than a handful now, but yeah. It was for a while that wasn't the very common path here, and now there even is. The G League is starting their development program, and we are very intrigued by that and want to see how that works. And it looks like at least it's going to be a possible avenue this year where there may not be basketball, so they can at least train and possibly make some money doing that. And I'm willing to give it a chance too. I know some people already kind of writing it off as there not being enough 5-on-5 and worried about how the roster is going to ultimately be constructed. I want to give it a chance.
Yeah, like let's see what the finished product.
We're giving that a chance. The thing I think that we both feel, Jason and I, is that the NCAA model is not the only model to go pro, and there very well could be a very successful developmental model. It really just kind of depends on the player. But my feeling always has been that if a player feels that they're ready to go to the NBA and the NBA feels that this player is ready, they should be able to do so.
Yeah.
Now, just to continue that point, I think that for the longest time, it seems like the prep to pro model, it didn't have enough of a. It had 10 years or 11 years, right? So 1995.
Kevin Garnett was like really the first. Like, I mean, there was like Moses Malone like way back in the day, but then it's like Kevin Garnett's the first modern.
Yeah, and the reason, so it was actually somebody that I know. His name is Not Zay, and he did a video about Kobe Bryant, and he talks about the long drought between a high school player going to the NBA draft, like Bill Willoughby and Daryl Dawkins and so on. I feel the ultimate reason seemed to be, or like at least why it became such an alternative, is due to the creation of these guaranteed rookie deals. And so 1995 is the first draft where you had those guaranteed rookie deals. The year before that draft, Big Dog Robinson comes in, gets drafted by the Milwaukee Bucks, wants $100 million off the bat. This was at a point where no one had a $100 million contract yet. And like I think he ended up getting like somewhere in like the 70 to 80 million range.
I know he was getting paid. Like he was like definitely like one of the highest paid players in the league.
And like, I think in the NFL, this is another like kind of thing that they went through until they saw the NBA. Like this is like many, many years later, they saw the NBA structure and they're like, hey, why don't we do that? And
Yeah, just
now they do guaranteed
the value.
rookie deals
Yeah,
as well. So they institute these guaranteed rookie deals, and that is a reason why a guy like Kevin Garnett goes to the NBA draft. You draft him, you give him a lot of money, but you don't necessarily have to give him this long-term, because they were signing longer-term deals as well. So you don't have to give him like this long-term crazy deal. The other feeling I have is with the beginning of the whole prep to pro thing, I don't think they knew how to evaluate high school players, at least in the context of the entire draft. So we look at that next year. So Kevin Garnett goes 5th. He should have gone first. We both feel that, and
in hindsight,
ultimately that should have been a thing. I think there were probably like a handful of draft analysts back then that even had Kevin Garnett first. They saw a special talent, but the vast majority did not have him going top 3 or anything like that. And 5 seemed to kind of be the high point, because the 4 guys that went in front of him were all sophomores and all very established. That next year, where Kobe goes 13 and Jermaine O'Neal goes 17, the amazing part with both of those guys is they're crazy young for class. Kobe was born in August, so he was drafted at 17. Jermaine O'Neal goes into training camp at 17. He was
like the youngest player of all time for a while.
Yeah. He was an October 78 birthday, and turned 18 just right before his rookie season started. For a while they don't really know how to evaluate guys, and then I think it kicks in. They see and they're like, oh yeah, if you're one of the best players in your class and you're this great basketball talent, odds are that even if guys are more established and further ahead of you, you're probably going to catch up. So they finally get that going. And now it's just, I think that the biggest reason I would see this is from an ownership perspective of having a prep to pro, or having the one and done, also from a scouting perspective, is having that year of college basketball data and ability to track that player and just see how they grow as an individual, how they grow as a player, having that statistical data. So that would be a big reason. And so when we show you our list, because what we did here is we're pretending this week that the age limit, giving kind of an idea of if the age limit had never existed.
Yeah.
And
if they just had kept the course, and it's let them all go in, because that's the way it should be, because a lot of these guys could have and should have be able to, should make that jump.
A lot of them are able to. And let's look at, if we went over the data and looked at the failure rate of these high school guys, so last week when we went over the best players in each draft and everything, you see that they had 3 number 1 picks who were high school players. And Kwame Brown obviously did not work out. But then you have LeBron James, Dwight Howard. You're not going to have that every year where you have these guys who are head and shoulders number 1 in the draft. And I think that the other thing that you'll see in the RSCI, which is what we're going to use, and I'll explain that a little bit more later. It's not always this pristine number 1 pick. And then in many years when players have gone to college, you'll see, okay, this guy who was rated number 1 may not have actually been the best player in that class.
Yeah.
And this guy who was rated number 3 may show a bit more NBA potency, and you may well have needed college to show that. The thing that I will also suggest is that the RSCI number 1, even if, let's say it's a dead on, every recruiting service feels that's not necessarily the way the NBA will feel. And for instance, Kwame Brown was number 6 in his RSCI. And he was the only one of those 3 draft picks that went number 1 that was number 6, but
not the number 1.
Yeah, exactly. But I still feel like there would be workouts and there would be intel and information that certainly could make a guy who's the number one player not that in a draft. And I think I have a unique perspective on like at least the last few drafts in the number that we're giving you. So we're going to do 2006 to 2015 and who we believe would have been the number one pick in the draft. We're going to, it's obviously very hypothetical.
Yeah, totally.
A lot of, it's like a Hayao Miyazaki film. You need to suspend some beliefs, go into this world.
Come along on this journey to a different time, and we're looking at the player from that perspective as well.
And like a Hayao Miyazaki film, it's going to be a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So,
but they won't put it on Disney Plus, so you never.
Are they on Disney Plus?
They're not.
Fuck you. Why would you get my hopes up like this? We'll start with 2006, and this was as we talked about last week, Jace, not a great draft.
No, like
a shitty draft.
Pretty draft.
I was willing to go there.
That would have been perfectly primed for a couple of these high school guys, and we're talking, with the number one pick in the draft, it's the Toronto Raptors. It's a team. You have. Did they still have Vince? Or no, Vince had left. They traded Vince.
Yeah.
But
I actually have their roster right up here.
Because Vince had won since like 2005.
We have it's built on Chris Bosh. They just drafted Charlie B. Rafael Arujo still hanging on by a thread.
Well, because again, guaranteed rookie contract.
Yeah.
So, he's reaping the benefits of that.
Had a long-term point guard, Mike James.
Yeah.
And
hey, he's the
Raptor himself, Mo Peterson.
Yeah, Mo Pete was a starter.
Yeah. So it was a heavy rebuilding process. Oh, also this year, Jalen Rose, as we remember. I want to see the Kobe scoring numbers from this year because I thought he might have had multiple 60-point games. He did have at least two, but he scored 81 during this
predominantly
season.
On Jalen Rose.
Yes.
But yeah.
Have you ever seen that meme where he has the kind of lined up hair and somebody said it was like the barber was cold for giving him the 81-degree angle on the hair?
He's good sport about it because he lives with that haunting memory. But yeah, you look at this draft.
Yeah, he's got bag. He's cool.
It's a pretty whatever draft, and then there's these like exciting. There's two basically exciting high school guys, and again with the number one pick, it's the Raptors. The way the NBA is still built at that time.
Yeah.
You want a center. A center builds your franchise.
Well, also, in the case of the RSCI, and then even in the case of, so Kevin Durant has this fantastic college season, and I'm sure he would have been equally excellent in the pre-draft process and was considered a very, high-level prospect. I believe he would have gone second in this draft, but if Toronto still had the number one pick, well, I guess there'd be no reason they wouldn't. The other picks, you're going to have to suspend some disbelief, and like even our brains couldn't handle how the NBA would change with all these picks. But we're just going with whoever had the number one pick that season. And so, it would have been Greg Oden. And Greg Oden, it would have been really interesting to see what he would have done like prep to pro, because that honestly might have been his one healthy season.
Yeah,
like that's the thing.
You look at the season he put up at Ohio State. I mean, wrist.
Yeah, he had the wrist.
Hand.
We don't know he gets in the fight with his brother if he gets drafted number one in the NBA, though.
Well, that would be another thing.
Change everything.
But again, it wasn't like the microfracture knee thing. And again, it's like he's a center. He doesn't have he never had like the widest frame base for center. He's not like thick.
He's pretty thick, bro.
Mm-hmm.
He was strong.
He was like,
Greg Oden was very strong. Like when he was playing, he was like 270, 280, man.
Okay, yeah.
He was like some people felt like he had put too much onto his upper body, which is why the
yeah, I definitely think like definitely over Bargnani. You know, again, like Greg Oden's.
Oh yeah. Like so, and the other thing is we'll kind of compare like who was the number one pick that year. Yeah, like we'll just put it this way. In 2006, if you were to tell Raptors fans they had Greg Oden and they could have had Andrea Bargnani, they would have been like, let's ride this out. we're very down for Greg Oden. He was an incredible defensive prospect. That was the big thing with him. Very strong.
Yeah, that's huge.
Like excellent frame for a center. At least you felt like, you know, we didn't know about the injury issues and everything there. They hadn't really come to the forefront even when he was drafted in 2007. You know, if you want harp on the wrist, Jason, I see I see in your eyes.
No, but the wrist.
Your wrist harping, not very appreciated.
He came back from the wrist, and I'll forgive him for that. But yeah, it's just like, yeah, this could have been his only healthy season. I think like, Greg out like your stereotypical center with Chris Bosh, you know, it helps expedite a rebuild.
Like, could you imagine just in like how you would have felt at the time having Greg Oden next to Chris Bosh? You would have been like, oh my god.
Totally. Like, what are the odds of having two guys in the front court that are good? Because again, like Arujo didn't do anything. Charlie V also like didn't give a ton.
The Charlie V Bosh fit, because like I don't think they were kind of obviously with the drafting of Hoffa. I think Charlie V they felt was just like for talent's sake, I guess. I don't know, but yeah, they the fit there was a little strange for sure. And I almost felt like they felt Charlie V was like the 3 when he clearly wasn't.
Yeah, which he never like had the
and like because Bosh was considered a 4. Like I don't think they were too interested in having Bosh play center, and Bosh I don't think was too interested.
Bosh wasn't able to probably do that, you know, do that kind of grind. Yeah, like I think like Greg Young goes number 1 to the Raptors, and then you have, and this would be good for Blazer fans because that number 2 pick is owned by the Bulls, but ends up going to Portland, and you know, like that could have been Kevin Durant.
Yeah, I don't think the Bulls do that trade.
No,
that's the problem. I think the Bulls keep Kevin Durant.
Yeah, I think you would keep Kevin Durant because again, he's the high volume.
As much as they love Tyrese Thomas, I think they keep Kevin Durant.
But if you're gonna go with one skinny guy, like go with the one that can actually shoot the ball.
Go with the one who's like an incredible handler.
Yeah, like and can shoot the ball, like
and like also like the physical attributes. Like Kevin Durant was very legit. So yeah, we feel that those 2 guys would have been the top 2 picks. You got the Bobcats picking next. Lord knows what they would have done.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I would say probably like LaMarcus Aldridge would probably be the
that's the guy I think they probably would have taken. Probably like unless they really really loved Morrison. But yeah, so we have some other possibilities here who would have been one and dones, and this is kind of the interesting thing. I'm sure there would have been more guys that would have come out of the woodwork eventually, but I feel like this year there were 4 other guys that I could think of that might have been one and dones, and it was Spencer Hawes, possibility. I know he came from a family that, you know, I guess was pretty well off, and but I think he still would have had interest.
But he's a center, you know. He's a high-ranked center.
Oh yeah, tall guy.
Like that is the
certainly had some talent too.
Yeah.
So yeah, Brandon Wright was another guy. I felt like he was the guy that I almost feel like was considered like 3rd after them. I don't think he would have been 3rd in the draft, and he might not have even gone top 5. But I think he could have been a lottery pick out of high school, like with the hype that he had. Thaddeus Young was another guy I felt like if he could have gone prep to pro, like that would have been definitely an alternative for him, and he ends up being a lottery pick that next year out of Georgia Tech. And then the other guy out of Georgia Tech, I felt he's a little further down the RSCI, and it's Javaris Crittenton. And yeah, he was certainly like had quite a bit of talent, and
like
was a really good athlete.
Like a bigger point guard too, you know. Like he brought a lot of size to that position.
Had a good year at Georgia Tech as well, but he Yeah, he's another guy I felt could have gone or would have at least explored the alternative of prep to pro. So that's 6 guys. That's not a ton. And I think the thing you'll notice here is there are likely, like, I'm just ballparking it here, but there are around as many guys from prep to pro as one and dones. And there are guys that very well could have just gone to college anyway. Like, it's no guarantees. But yeah, we're just kind of giving a hypothetical of what was happening at the time, or what could have happened at the time.
Yeah, just based on the trend. I mean, those guys that are getting that national level of attention, I mean, they're going to the NBA. Like,
so the RSCI is basically, it's a composite of some popular rankings. So you have, like, for the longest time it was Scout, 247, Van Coleman, and ESPN. And like in 2006, it was a few other different ones. But now I think it's pretty much just like like Van Coleman, 247, ESPN. I don't know if they'll bring in another one, but yeah, it's I feel like it's just kind of like a good to use multiple scouting services. And in 2006, that year of the RSCI, it was across the board Greg Oden number 1, and across the board Kevin Durant number 2, and after that you got a little bit of wiggle room with a few of the other prospects.
And in real life, that's what carried over to the 2007 draft. Now in 2020,
those 2 guys were considered like a tier among themselves.
Yeah. Like Greg Oden, yeah, he was an elite center, and just like injuries took a toll. But like moving on to 2007, like this was a super, at least like, especially at the time, like very deep high school class.
Yeah.
Even has the there's a documentary on Hulu, Gunning for the Number 1 Spot, directed by Adam Yauch, MCA. Mm-hmm. Really talks about, goes in depth on a lot of these guys like Michael Beasley, Derrick Rose. Of course.
And one guy I'll mention, because just when you're thinking about the actual 2007 draft, Mike Conley, I'm not sure would have been a prep to pro guy. I don't know if he had that kind of buzz. I certainly was a great athlete and ended up being the number 4 pick with that year of college, but I'm not certain he would have been a prep to pro guy.
There weren't a ton of there wasn't a lot of like point guard success.
Out of prep to pro, yeah, there wasn't a huge sample either.
I mean, Sebastian Telfair is kind of like
that's
pretty much it. Yeah, it kind of favored the bigger guys.
Yeah,
and then the
like 2006, Bassi had played like 2 years, right? Like, yeah, he hadn't had a very long career. And he also, in 2006, had garnered the ability to trade for like the 7th pick in the draft, right? So yeah, it was something. Like, yeah, there was still some value there, I guess, at least with Bassi.
Yeah, but there wasn't like a good looking back on it now too, it's like, yeah, there just wasn't any point guards that really made that transition. And I mean, obviously for Sebastian Telfair, I mean, I think the end of the day, it was like the ability to really shoot the ball at
In 2005, you'll notice a couple of small guards go in the second round and vastly outplayed their
you're talking like your Lou Williams, like, yeah, they end up being Imonte Ellis.
And also, I think like the possibility there as well is how the point guard position kind of like changed also in how it was viewed in rankings. That could be something to possibly look into as well.
Well, I think for 2007, like, I mean, I think, yeah, you look at this draft.
It's changed a lot.
And you look at Derrick Rose. I mean, that dude just.
Even when we look back at the league at the time, like point guards probably weren't as prevalent, like as far as running a team. When you look at like all-time point guard rankings, I think you'll be like shocked how many are like modern guys.
No, it's not, because it's a center. It's a league that starts at the 5 and then works its way down. So it's like they don't kind of get that. But yeah, I think Derrick Rose always just had that like extra burst and boost.
Yeah. Well, Derrick Rose, he was really rare, and yeah. So Portland drafting in 2007, the number 1 player in the RSCI is OJ Mayo. and OJ was a little older. Beasley was actually Michael Beasley was young class, so was he 2 in RSCI?
Yeah,
Or was
so,
Kevin? No, Kevin. So Kevin was 2.
Won some Player of the Year.
Eric Gordon was 3, and Beasley was 4. Rose was 5. This is a situation where, like, I even recall, just as at the time a big fan of going to NBADraft.net, I remember them having Derrick Rose and Michael Beasley, I believe at least, at the top of this class. And then I didn't get to see a ton of high school hoops at the time, but I was very intrigued by this class. I made my own rankings, and I had Derrick Rose number 1. And I just thought the athleticism, like the quickness, it really stood out.
And you saw that in college, immediately. Like, and he was a guy that took that team, and then he again proved.
We're taking college out of the equation here, man.
No, totally. But you look at like what he would have done in his rookie season in the NBA, based off of how he was, playing at that age.
Yeah, like he still would have been, I think, at least a decent player. Like,
he's ready. Yeah,
he comes into Chicago and is right away their best player.
Yeah, he's ready. He's ready for the league instantly. Like, I think OJ Mayo kind of proved that he really wasn't insanely ready for the.
Oh no, man! So OJ still goes 3.
Yeah,
and then OJ, there was even talk of Miami possibly being more interested in OJ than they were in Beasley. So OJ still had a really good freshman year. He just, I think the cream of the crop, if you factored in the college situation, was Derrick Rose and Beasley. And I still think if you would have gone through like that pre-draft process, I think teams would have been enamored by both of those players over an OJ Mayo, who the thing that he had over both of them was the shooting ability. And
notoriety. I mean, he'd been a known.
Yeah, the notoriety, yeah, but like
for a very long time.
We're talking basketball here, and like I think at the time also, like Derrick Rose, at the time, it was considered like he was surrounded by his brothers, and they had like never let him get into trouble, which he eventually just did anyway. But yeah, like. I guess they had kind of been looking out for him. If you were looking for like potential red flags, he surprisingly had the fewest out of
back in hindsight.
Beasley and Mayo. So yeah, I think Portland, like honestly, I think Portland probably would have gone with Derrick Rose here. I know they had a couple point guards that they were like, I guess, at least used at the time. Like Jared Jack was still around, though he was kind of more of a combo. They had Sergio and Sergio Rodriguez.
Yeah, but I think Derrick Rose just puts it like he's a point guard added.
I know. Like the athleticism and like like he gets to college and he leads the team to the NCAA finals. It's one of the best players in college basketball that year.
He's also another proof of why the one and done doesn't fully work, because again he might not have been number 1 pick. That's the other thing. Like that's a very real possibility. We're predicting he is, but ultimately, like NBA teams might not have gone with Derrick Rose number 1. Maybe, but he would have gone pretty high. And then he also, again, is one of those guys.
Oh, certainly.
Basically, kind of pretends to go to college.
Yeah.
Had someone take his SATs for him. Remember says, and it's just like that's why the NCAA is such a joke in that respect, because it's like they hold up this like facade of a lot of things. But
I guess I don't know.
I think Derrick Rose is a guy. He was ready to go. I think Beasley at that time ready to make the leap. Eric Gordon, I remember watching him play on ESPN against Michael Jordan's kids' school. And look,
Eric Gordon was
very impressive.
He already had like the frame, like that. Yeah. That was the thing with him. He was like not ideal size, but he was a good shooter. He had the frame. He and Derrick Rose played AAU together,
which is insane.
And then Kevin Love's like SoCal team also was like.
Yeah, I say Kevin Love is the kind of player that we had the ability to see him a lot in high school. And it's like he was a guy I didn't think would go to college.
Yeah. Oh, like
that wasn't a thing.
if that wasn't a thing, like, and he's a guy that I have prominently listed here, and another guy who, like, I'll be real, not out of the realm of possibility that he'd be one of the names floating around here, also.
Yeah. Oh, because he was so skilled. Like his knocks at the time, at the time out of high school was like maybe he's a little bit. Oh yeah, overweight, not athletic enough.
Yeah.
But what he did,
I think he would have picked up the conditioning program like a little earlier. If,
yeah.
And that's the other thing. Like, incentive here probably drives some of these players to do a few different things also. But yeah, so the other guys I felt. So I think the top 3 picks might have been high school guys. And then the other possible one and dones, Kevin Love, Eric Gordon, Jared Bayless, Dante Green, who ends up going to Syracuse and is, I believe, still a first-round pick after his lone year there.
Yeah, it goes at the end of the round.
Kosta Koufis, who was considered, among the best players in that high school class.
Thing at that time.
And then two other guys who were athletic, had bodies that I'm sure would have intrigued the NBA. Might have even gone higher as prep to pros than they did after their single year in college. I think DeAndre Jordan definitely would have. And, you could have the concerns and everything about him, but I think a lot of that came at Texas A&M. And then because he was such an athletic monster.
Yeah.
And then Anthony Randolph's potential. I can't say Anthony Randolph without saying potential. But yeah, Anthony Randolph would have been a very intriguing one that guy. And that's 13 names.
Yeah. No,
so,
this is a very deep class that had a lot of guys that really could have done that. But yeah, I think at the top.
Then if you look at the 2008 draft, like, it's just full of these one and done.
These guys, because this was probably the best class, like first best class.
Deep. Yeah, it was very
trickled all in at that time. But it's so amazing too when you think about it. It's like those are the guys that would have gone straight to the NBA. But then you look at the guys that we don't mention, that are still ranked pretty high in high school. Blake Griffin was 16.
Yeah. He's another guy, like, I think might have taken a long, hard look. Yeah, he and James Harden, I think, both would have taken a look. I think the fact that the one and done rule is instituted likely changes a lot of people's incentive to get to the NBA out of high school. But yeah, I just don't know if their names at the time would have been like synonymous with going straight to the NBA. But I almost, like, the thing I wonder is if in that next year, like after they both have very good freshman years, freshman seasons in college, like for Oklahoma and Arizona State respectively. I almost wonder if they would have just gone after that 1 year, like, that would have been a more likely route for them. But let's move on to 2008, and let's assume, I don't know, I'm just assuming that they both would have come back for their sophomore seasons, like they ended up doing anyway.
Yeah, no, totally.
And it's not out of the realm of possibility they would have. There were going to be a few picks here who did return for sophomore seasons or later seasons, who I am going to say likely would have left, but I think that might have also been due to how they played during that season and all that stuff. But 2008, we have the Chicago Bulls. And if the Blazers do get Derrick Rose in 2007, by the way, that's like a little bit of an upgrade. Definitely hindsight being 2020.
Yeah.
But
and given the terms, yeah.
2008. It's tough. Like, this is a really tough one. I honestly think that if the Chicago Bulls, like, I think they would have looked at these two guys, and I think they might have leaned this one way that might not have been the right way. I'm thinking Brandon Jennings might have been the number one pick in the draft that year.
Totally.
He seemed like it just seemed like he was considered, the number one guy in that class by most
He
people.
was considered the number one guy. He also, had an it factor to him.
Yeah. If you look in the RSCI, and I bet he would have gotten like, they would have had a microscope and looked at him and worried about his size and, worried about all of those things. He goes lower in the 2009 draft. Like he goes number 10, which at the time, like that was almost a shock that he went even that low. But his 1 year playing in Italy wasn't necessarily like a raging success.
Yeah, as uber successful as people thought it would
hard
be.
For a high school kid to go and play grown-ass man pro basketball
in a foreign country, like, and it becomes your job. It's
professional basketball is a
right,
job.
but that's why there's a mental difference between like messing around in college and high school, especially, and being in like.
Would have been here too.
Yeah.
Certainly would have been here. But yeah, the other. So I feel like the Bulls would have looked really hard between Brandon Jennings and Drew Holiday. The debate at the time, I think, if you take out like so the 2008 NBA draft, obviously the first three picks are the guys we felt would have been the first three picks in 2007.
Yeah.
So you take those guys out. The fourth pick, Russell Westbrook. Is Russell Westbrook going 2 over Drew Holiday? Like that, I think that could have been a possibility. It would have at least been a debate. Because I think Russell Westbrook, if you take out like all of those one and done guys and you have this class, which I don't feel was necessarily seen as being on the level as the year before.
Yeah, no, definitely.
It could have been a debate. And I think Drew Holiday versus Russell Westbrook was a debate. Like for UCLA people. Like, at the time, like you have Russ and then you have Drew come in. And Drew like certainly had a better freshman year than Russ, but then Russ has this sophomore season that
him
into the top 5.
Yeah, and then just like playing, just
and also like
elevates above that.
There were like Drew was big, and certainly like had very intriguing like physical attributes, but like Russ like insane, just crazy. Like like the wide athleticism, all of those things. And Drew doesn't necessarily like set the world on fire during his freshman season at UCLA. Goes a little bit lower in the draft than one certainly would have expected here. But I feel like if he had had the chance to come out of high school, he was really highly regarded. And he would have been in the conversation for number 1. But I think the Bulls might have leaned Brandon Jennings.
Yeah, I think Brandon Jennings.
Just based on like he was a dynamic point guard. And
super quick, and like he was able to score too. I mean, he puts up 55 in his rookie, his NBA rookie year.
Yeah.
Like,
and the thing I wanted to mention, that was against Steph Curry.
Yeah. No, that's like that's why. Like, it was a time where it was like Brandon Jennings is a point guard on the up and up.
Oh, Brandon Jennings for rookie of the year debate.
Yeah.
Like, at the beginning of the year when the Bucks make the playoffs and everything. Another player, he may have been in this discussion. I'm not sure. Certainly was highly regarded as well and considered like, from a strength perspective, Tyreke Evans.
Yeah, he's a bigger,
another dynamic wing.
Yeah, bigger.
DeMar DeRozan, who is very athletic, and I think could have, as much as he wanted Romeo Miller to play for USC and like, use his kind of juice to get him in there.
Yeah, but how Romeo Miller ends up transferring to ICDC college.
Yeah,
he does a lot of for them now.
These are all guys. So this was the first Hoop Summit I actually go to. Just as a fan, and Drew Holiday plays well. DeMar DeRozan plays well. Tyreke Evans. Brandon doesn't play in it, which was too bad, but because I really wanted to see him. But yeah, Brandon like in the All-Star circuit like almost seemed to be trying like too hard to get assists. But that year at Oak Hill, I think like the year before or he like breaks like I think the assist record and then like breaks like the scoring record. Like he's just doing crazy things. And he was very dynamic, a very fun player, considered to have like this range and like, this ability to see the floor. And like for a while is considered like a very intriguing point guard prospect. It just, it's the efficiency. I'd say the efficiency definitely stalled there. And like, if you take Brandon Jennings number 1, you would have been disappointed. Like, undoubtedly.
Eventually, yeah.
Derrick Rose was a much more fun ride for the fans of the Chicago Bulls than Brandon Jennings would have been.
I think Brandon Jennings is more on the frustrating side, where Derrick Rose is more that like the injury sadness side.
Yeah. But Derrick Rose also becomes like an MVP and has some wonderful moments there. The other players I felt would have taken a long, hard look from the 2008 high school class. Greg Monroe, he goes to Georgetown, but I think he certainly would have looked at being a prep to pro. He was considered like a pretty intriguing center prospect. Always like a good passer, the athleticism.
Yeah, like a good skill set for a big guy.
Yeah. Al Farouk Aminu was looked like a very intriguing wing prospect, and also like the physical attributes there, like, the 7'3" wingspan. At least thought there was more upside with his handle that never really seems to transpire. But BJ Mullins, he was seen as like, legit 7-footer, athleticism. And then the last guy I think who would have considered from that class, a Jason Visenberg personal favorite, Ed Davis.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, not my
Ed and DeMar, man. Ed and DeMar.
Not my favorite from personal interaction. He wasn't the nicest person to me in that moment. But I'm sure other than that, he's a great person. And I wish him no wrong. Also had, some fun times with Tyreek Evans as well, with his big Wreak Havoc necklace.
Yeah.
That was a little unnecessary in my face, but
All right. So
they all learn.
Yeah. So 2009, we're assuming that Blake Griffin goes back. We're assuming that James Harden goes back. Now you have to factor in that Kentucky probably isn't getting a bunch of their guys. So John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, I think head straight to the pros.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. So and John Wall considered like, I know that I think Rivals, I believe, had like Avery Bradley number 1, but most people had John Wall number 1. And would John Wall have gone above Blake Griffin? I personally say no.
Yeah, probably not, because I think Blake is that size strength package.
Yeah. He like just after that sophomore year in high school or in college at Oklahoma, he I think it would have taken a lot to knock him off. And the thing with John Wall too is, so at this point you'll have Derrick Rose with like a few years under his belt in the NBA, and he, like, John Wall, many people considered to be almost equal footing to Derrick Rose as a prospect. Like, so would Derrick Rose have gone above Blake Griffin? I don't know. Like, it's a debate.
It's a debate. It's just, it's hard to, have Blake Griffin's kind of skill set and have like, and go ahead of him as a point guard. But, he
was so dynamic as well. But so was John Wall. Like, John Wall's speed with the ball was like,
oh totally
crazy. And then had the size too. And yeah, he, and then was a better passer than Derrick Rose. Like, I think people felt that like right off the bat.
But then you look at that second pick, like, you think John Wall's better than Hasheem Thabeet?
Yes.
Most definitely. Yeah. DeMarcus Cousins as well.
I feel like Hasheem Thabeet would have slipped.
Oh, no, totally. It's like,
and well, DeMarcus has the off court and like, just I think DeMarcus, even as a high school prospect, like, people doing intel probably had things to worry about with DeMarcus Cousins.
Yeah, but it's
DeMarcus Cousins, if you went by straight up like talent after their freshman year, like, how does he not go number 2? Or at least number 3. Like, I know Evan Turner's had a great junior year and ends up going number 2, but like, yeah, to me it was crazy that people were considered better than DeMarcus Cousins. That was just like, I think there were still concerns there that likely would have kept him from going that high. I went with a top 4 here that I feel might have been done in this draft if they had been allowed to go out of high school and Blake Griffin, James Harden come back for their sophomore seasons and enter in that draft in 2009. I think Blake Griffin, number 1 to the Clippers. John Wall, number 2 to Memphis. And I know Memphis had Mike Conley and everything. I just think John Wall was that level of guy. And I think it would have been like Blake Griffin, John Wall, like tier. And you could say Memphis would have looked hard at James Harden, but they do end up taking Hasheem Thabeet over James Harden. So I feel like
they didn't look
to get them not to get Memphis to make a better decision here.
Yeah.
We have them just saying we can't pass up John Wall. We can't pass up this talent.
Well, it's funny. John Wall's the first point guard taken in this in this draft that was fairly had some good point. Ricky Rubio.
Yeah, definitely. Ricky
Rubio's the next point.
Ricky Rubio, like people thought Memphis, it would be hard to pass up Ricky Rubio too. And the thing with Ricky Rubio is everybody knew that he likely wasn't coming to the NBA for a couple years. So that might have been like part of the reason they slipped to 5.
And then you have Johnny.
Yeah, he was considered a big time prospect as well.
Johnny Flynn, and then you have like this Steph Curry guy who's like whatever, and John Wall would have been that first point guard off the board for sure.
So I feel like Harden, Oklahoma City still takes Harden 3. 4, Sacramento. I'm going with Derek Favors. I think they take Derek Favors. Yeah. And it was Tyreek Evans would have been 4 and would have gone in the year before. So yeah. Yep. So yeah. Other possible one and dones from this draft. DeMarcus Cousins. I think certainly would have entered, likely would have gone very high. Definitely some question marks where he probably wouldn't have gone as high as John Wall and Derek Favors. Does Derek Favors in the RSCI?
He was number 1.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a pretty big deal as well.
Yeah.
Still think John Wall goes ahead of him in the draft, but yeah, it's like neck and neck there with those two guys. And John Wall's ranked a little lower. John Wall was also like a post grad, so I think people kind of like dinged him for that. But yeah, absolutely. Like John Wall was, I think, considered the top talent from an NBA perspective among that group. Avery Bradley, as we mentioned before, I believe Rivals ranks him, or was it ESPN or Rivals?
I think it was Sports Illustrated.
SI?
Yeah. He was
SI had rankings?
like he had he's kind of that combo guard. You think maybe he can play some point, which never materialized. But I mean,
damn. Well, yeah. He was certainly a highly regarded prospect and leaves after 1 year in the NCAA at Texas. Xavier Henry, who ends up going to Kansas, was a very intriguing wing prospect at the time.
He was Slam's like senior diary or whatever. They used to have that, the senior guy. You'd read that every issue. You kind of like,
hey, let's look at some Slam diary guys.
Oh no, totally. That's an episode in and of itself. It doesn't end up well, but it's like that's my connection to them. I'm always like, oh, it's in the Slam diary. Okay,
yeah.
On.
For sure. I wonder if Renardo Sidney, who was early on in this class considered like this incredible talent,
big guy,
gets bigger as high school progresses, and I had heard things kind of went to his head and ends up playing for Mississippi State, has a tumultuous time there, and even gets into a fight in Maui with one of his teammates. It's a lot of Renardo Sidney stories out there. I wonder if he doesn't at least try and test the waters, and if you're talking about like off-court stuff that would have worried teams, Renardo probably has that as well.
And then I think Lance Stevenson probably would have.
Yes, that was my last guy.
He's in New York.
And I think Lance would have been an intriguing guy there as well.
He's kind of.
And so those are my 9 guys who likely, or at least would have given a try in 2009 if Prep to Pro were a thing.
He's kind of that combo guardy thing, and of course he's from New York City, so he's projected to be way better. You know, like some people think he's like the second.
Well, the OJ Mayo Lance Stevenson camp battle is what a lot of people talk about. Lance Stevenson, as a freshman, challenges OJ Mayo during a camp battle, and I guess holds his own for like the first little part, and then OJ kind of gets the better of him. But people are just like, "Wow, like this is like a grown ass kid." And
he probably was like 20 at the time.
Might have
been in high school.
Wouldn't put it past him.
Yeah, like when you're old enough to vote in a couple of elections and you're still in high school, like time to move on.
Lance has the longer NBA career. So
no, I mean he's still like kind of around.
Yeah. So then 2010. It was an intriguing high school class. It was I missed the 2009 Nike Hoop Summit. I get to go to 2010, and this is just me going as a fan as well and going to the game. And Harrison Barnes, definitely like considered like a high level prospect at this time and considered the number 1 guy in this class. The Black Falcon, I believe, was his nickname, and the brand that he had started out of. He was from Iowa.
Also, Slam Diary.
Yes, he was a big time one. I think if given the ability, we know he plays 2 years at North Carolina. I think given the ability out of high school, he had the hype. He would have gone straight to the pros, and I think he would have been the number 1 pick. Like, people were super intrigued by him, the work ethic. They saw shooting potential. I think they saw maybe even like a little bit more of that, like, I don't know, like it's hard to say primary creator. Like, I don't think they would have seen that, or even secondary, but like a good scoring wing who provided defensive versatility, which was what he did. Like that was what, like the fact that he could be a combo forward for the Warriors and guard either forward position and provide versatility there. Like, he played a nice role for them in 2015 and 2016.
And sometimes, like with the high school guys, I mean, like they were drafted a little bit later, like your Tracy McGrady's, but it's like it took him a few years to develop. Like he didn't come in as this like the great scorer that he became. I mean, people thought he had that potential.
Yeah.
But, it did, like, he really didn't come on till his like last year or so in Toronto.
Yeah, there was a lot of hype for Harrison Barnes, and like I'm not sure anybody would have surpassed that. Even like it would have been, well, I don't think it was ever really much of a battle, but the battle at the time in 2010, if you're looking at the actual draft, is John Wall and Evan Turner were seen as the number 1 and 2 picks, and I think it would have been Harrison Barnes even over Evan Turner. I think Evan Turner still might have gone 2. And then 3, it would have been interesting, but I think it might have been Enes Kanter.
Yeah, I think as a big guy who'd kind of had some experience, right, playing professional, kind of. Didn't he play in like a?
Yeah, well, that's the whole reason he doesn't get to play Kentucky.
Killed his eligibility after college.
Yeah,
I think Enes Kanter had a lot of excitement and potential.
Yeah, he played that last year of high school in California before going to the NBA. Enes Kanter, if you go back and look at his like FIBA like youth statistics, guy annihilated that level. Like he had a game, I think, against Jonas, and this might have been a draft Jonas would have entered as well, like because we're assuming that the international age limit isn't going on either, or it gets changed to like 18. And he had a game against Jonas where I think he had like 32 points and like 25 rebounds, like just nuts, like at the U18 level. Yeah, Ennis was a monster. And then in that Hoop Summit, Ennis breaks the Dirk Nowitzki single game scoring record. And it was a very intriguing guy. Like, I think, I don't know, I guess RSCI is probably weird with Ennis because
he's weighted low just because someone had him 25.
Yeah, exactly.
But everyone else
it's an interesting situation, and
because it's like foreign entities in high school, right? Like that's always a thing. I mean, other guys.
Oh man, that's hilarious. Yeah.
Other guys that could have, definitely made the jump. Kyrie.
I think Kyrie might have. I have Kyrie as a possibility. I think, like, I know at Hoop Summit, like, just his ability to, like, create for himself and, like, in isolation, and, like, at the end of that game, like, Kyrie was the guy that they got the ball to and, like, just kind of got out the way, and he made things happen. So, yeah, I think he would have been really intriguing. And I almost wonder, like, if he might have gone, like, a little higher than where he was ranked, because Jared Sullinger was considered the number 2 guy at the time, and is really good in college. Obviously,
he's really good in college, but he I think athleticism, and some of the NBA things you're looking for, Jared Sullinger didn't fully.
But even if Jared Sullinger had entered in 2011, I still think he could have been a lottery pick. Like, I think the reason he ends up slipping in the draft has a lot to do with the medical. And there were, like, medical issues there. If he doesn't have that, he's still like I think he still is a likely, like, prep to pro guy. But you're absolutely right, like, as far as athleticism, like, down the line. And, let's assume that these guys still have to go through testing and he's not, like, good enough to just, like, skip the combine. Yeah, he would have gotten dinged for that. Because as we saw, once he goes to the athleticism combine, like, there were some huge issues laterally and with his defense, and obviously, like, conditioning concerns as well.
Like Brandon Knight.
Yeah.
Again, if Calipari's recruiting
also on my list,
you're probably not meant to really go to college in the sense of you're ready for professional career. Mm-hmm. So, like, Brandon,
well, he always talks up his guys too. But I feel this.
Of course, but I think, like, he gets a lot of those guys that are. He's the one who's benefited the most from this policy.
Hard to say otherwise.
Yeah, like, he's the one. I mean, obviously Tobias Harris does not test the waters because nothing is going to stop him from his destiny of being Boban's best friend, and anything that would have derailed that would need to be stopped. So no.
See, I say he does, and he brings Boban over even sooner.
Even sooner, okay. Then that's the story I need to do. But I'm like, if something derails and we're on this alternate plane and there's no Bobby and Toby, like,
Bobby and Toby's happening.
Yeah.
The universe willed it to happen, but I feel like Tobias Harris would have been a candidate here as well.
Yeah, I think he
possessed. Josh Selby, I think, like, there's, like, no way he's not going. He's going to Kansas. Like, if there's a prep to pro option, that guy's going. And he was rated number 1 by Rivals. This was the guy who was rated number 1 by Rivals, and like, seen as a scoring guard and, like, just very good
offensive guy. Like, athletic. Like, he has those, like, athletic gifts that you're like, okay, he's got some boost. Yeah. And so, like, he would have benefited totally from not going to college. From getting to, use that raw talent that he had and take it, and then college kind of obviously, expose some different things.
So the early number 1 in this class by Scout, I believe, Tristan Thompson. This was as a sophomore. Tristan Thompson was seen as possibly having wing potential. And boy, did that take a 180 and go completely the other way. But obviously he finds the right role for him as a small ball 5.
I think athletically he has, again, big.
Athletic, the wingspan, rebounding instincts, and then the defensive versatility there.
Yeah, I think for a guy
plays well in the Hoop Summit as well.
For Tristan, like, he can come in because he fills certain roles already of like rebounding toughness.
I don't have Corey going one and done.
No.
I know, or going prep to pro. I know he was one and done. But yeah, I don't have Corey, but it could have been a possibility. The last two guys I have, Will Barton, who I think would have looked long and hard. I know he plays 2 years at Memphis, but I think he would have looked very hard at going pro. He had a lot of hype and was obviously could get buckets. And then another player who had a hype goes to Syracuse for a few years. Fab Melo, rest in peace.
No, totally. Again,
Fab was a big dude, seen as having all of this upside, and I think he would have at least tried to see what things were like, and see if there was some interest.
High school guys, you get drafted in the first round, so you're on that rookie contract. I mean, like teams are a little willing to hopefully let you marinate, develop, and then we're getting into that period of time too when the G League's coming around too, and they can kind of demote guys as well to kind of give them a little more seasoning. So I think it caters pretty favorably. I think 2010 we see another class where we're probably going to see a lot of guys that would go. I think right off the bat, 2011, Anthony Davis.
Yeah. So in 2011. Anthony Davis isn't like 100% the number one player in this class in the RSCI, I believe. Because
Austin Rivers on Rivals.
Oh yeah. So yeah, Austin Rivals number one. Yeah. So Anthony Davis was number one by everybody but Rivals. Damn, Rivals. Yeah. So Anthony Davis was the guy that I feel would have gone number one in 2011 to the Cleveland Cavaliers, who were reeling off of LeBron James. They draft Kyrie Irving. If they draft Anthony Davis in 2011, like Anthony Davis, if people don't know the story, like nobody was talking about Anthony Davis until he was a rising junior, and then he skyrockets up the class. And he had this huge growth spurt during his. I
think he just had like low major, like he had like mid-major kind of offers.
Yeah, like Cleveland State. Like I heard Cleveland State was where he was thinking of going. He was 6'3" guard, and then he rose to 6'10" with this 7'6" wingspan, or however long it is now, and still has this incredible fluidity and like a mean streak and defensive awareness. Like the guy just knows how to play basketball, like runs like an absolute deer. The way he moved as a guy that size, like, yes, he people worried about his body because at the time he was skinny, like he hadn't really filled out yet, but yeah, obviously like has these wide shoulders. At the Hoop Summit that year, I only saw the game. This was the first year I wrote about the game for NBA Draft.net. And I guess I'll bring this up. I write that I like the Kevin Garnett comparisons, and it gets changed by NBA Draft.net. But I still have that copy. I still have my original where I wrote that. And yeah, it's like the guy has been amazing. And let's just say, like, in a few years, so you'll see the next couple picks that we make for the Cavaliers, because they have those 3 number 1 picks within those seasons. And, Anthony Davis might have fast-tracked that a little bit. But so Kyrie wouldn't have been there. But LeBron's still probably looking pretty hard and being like, okay, Cleveland, you have Anthony Davis here. Let's go.
Push that union forward.
Yeah.
Because you have that.
So yeah, if LeBron could have been like, okay, we have Anthony Davis in Cleveland, maybe he goes long term there. Who knows? Yeah. Like maybe he's just like, okay, this is where I'm gonna end up.
No, I think yeah. Davis is a consensus, just like number 1 talent, always kind of head of class. The guy who's that number 2 in this class that also would have definitely gone.
But I think would have been somebody that people would have thought about number 1 even. Like it wouldn't have been crazy. Like given the context at the time, I think like they would have looked at it and just seen Anthony Davis and thought that it was just too much to pass up on, and he would have been the guy that I think I at the time would have been like, okay, like this guy. I don't know. After seeing that game, I was sold.
Yeah, but then you have this guy that you used to talk about in high school.
Yeah,
to come to the NBA, and he's like the first.
He was. This was at the time where mixtapes were getting popular.
First thing he was going to.
He was a mixtape legend.
He was going to look around the prison yard and dunk on LeBron James, and that's Austin Rivers.
Yeah, and so my feeling, the way I broke it down, I think Austin goes 3, because Derek Williams probably still goes 2. There's probably a ton of hype, and David Kahn was the general manager at the time. I think there's still a lot of hype for Derek Williams back then, even, and he was like, "Oh, I just had to go with the hype." And like Derek Williams would have been still, I think, a pretty big deal. I had Rivers 3, and then the guy at 4, I think. So the Cavs, have the 1 and the 4. They take Kyrie and Tristan Thompson after their freshman seasons. This Cavs situation, I think, would have been a lot better. And I think the guy that they might have leaned into at 4, Bradley Beal. So Bradley Beal, I think, would have absolutely been a possibility. Like, the shot was beautiful. Like, Eric Gordon looked like a successful player to me at the time, and like it has been a successful player, and Bradley Beal was seen as possibly being like a better version of Eric Gordon, and is definitely that and more. The other guy I think they could have looked at, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist.
I think Michael Kidd-Gilchrist also had such a varied skill set of so many different things.
Right. What made me super intrigued by Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, like he had probably been the guy on that team I had seen the most. Like I somehow had gotten to stream his games more than anybody else at the time when it was very tough for me to get these games. But like St. Patrick and Elizabeth was like seen as a top high school team, and I got to see some MKG games. And then the thing you notice, like in the Hoop Summit, he comes off the bench and like just changes everything. Like the defense, the jump shot's just so wonky, and like you just wondered how he was going to create his own offense. But he was a really good passer. He certainly like had amazing like physical attributes as well for what was considered a wing. It was just like his inability to shoot, I think, would have made it tough.
It's not like hurt his NBA, but like
even though he ends up going number 2 that next year over Bradley Beal. I think Cleveland, like, if you look for like that guard to the scoring guard to go along with Anthony Davis, I think they would have given Bradley Beal a hard look. But yeah, MKG would have been there as well. A few other guys that I think could have made the plunge. Quincy Miller had a lot of hype at the time. Some people felt like he had as much upside as anybody outside of like Anthony Davis and Austin Rivers. James Michael McAdoo doesn't have the best hoops on the game, I recall, but still was considered he does well like in the other All-Star games, and I think even like moves up the rankings as we get closer to the end. Marcus Teague. Another guy who is instrumental in Kentucky winning that championship. They lose all those guys, I feel. And then another guy I think who was also on that Hoops Summit team, Tony Roden. I think Tony Roden might have gone prep to pro. The shot there obviously being concerned as well, but like
the big point guard,
great size, great size, and definitely like a dynamic playmaker, lefty. So yeah, those were the 8 guys I have there.
No, yeah, this was a decent, like, it's a weird class when you're looking back at it now, because there's a lot of guys when you're looking at draft history that were ranked super high. But yeah, like Davis, Rivers, like at the time, like had so much lore to them.
Definitely. And I know in that game, like Bismack Biyombo gets a ton of hype, and he enters that draft. And yeah, I still, to me, that was the Anthony Davis game. Like I saw him and I just saw like so much possible NBA potential there. And then, oh shoot, you know who actually ends up going in later? Who's certainly, I think, yeah, this was a guy I didn't remember just until now. Andre Drummond. So yeah, Andre Drummond ends up reclassifying.
Yeah, because
Yeah, because that's why he's not in those rankings.
Oh, because he went to like UConn.
Yeah, because they do the rankings and then he reclassified a lot later. Yeah, Andre Drummond could have gone as high as 2.
Yeah, he would have been pretty up there because
he was
very well looked at as
he would have been young for class, like everything. And man, like just when you're talking about physical attributes and athleticism, like
yeah,
he was a total freak. Certainly like raw skill set wise, but he played a different role at UConn they did like in the NBA. Like he had to do more at UConn they ends up having to do in the NBA.
Oh, totally. Like it's
that first year. And yeah, man. So yeah, Andre Drummond would have been man, Cavs. If he goes to 4, the Cavs might have even thought of taking him.
Yeah, I mean that would have been.
Yeesh, 2 big dudes right to start that lineup, man. But yeah, Andre Drummond might have been the 2nd pick. Like, yeah,
go from that class, like
he was definitely had some hype to him.
2012 has definitely got some yikes for me, at least, as far as like I don't know that many people that I think would be super.
That was very yikes. And there were 2 guys to me that stand out at the top of that class. Neither of them Anthony Bennett. At the time, like I think people were intrigued by Anthony Bennett, and like Anthony Bennett might have been a lottery pick. Certainly could have been outside of that. I think he could have gone prep to pro. Like it would have been a possibility. Again, like incentive might have been different. The 2 guys at the top of that class to me, and this is the first Hoop Summit I get to go to where I go to all the practices and the game, and that gives you an entirely different perspective and, of course, more ability to be around NBA personnel and around these guys and around other, people, other viewpoints to kind of get that gauge. The 2 guys I think who stand out at the top of that high school class, Nerlens Noel and Shabazz Muhammad. Shabazz Muhammad in that Hoop Summer game scores 35 points. The USA scores 75 points. At the time, I think it was the fewest points ever scored in the game, and Shabazz Muhammad broke this single-player scoring record for the game.
And I think we should shout
and
it
they lose.
I think he was also Slam Diary.
Shabazz Muhammad?
Yeah.
Well, come on. He was the number 1 guy.
Yeah.
Until Nerlens, because Nerlens ends up reclassifying. This would have been even thinner without Nerlens. I'm thinking the guy that ends up going number 1, if this was prep to pro, is Nerlens. I think the New Orleans Hornets take Nerlens. And I think Shabazz likely is the 2nd pick in the draft by the Bobcats. And certainly changes things.
Yeah, like would have definitely been a lot of
Nerlens is definitely like a step down from Anthony Davis. And then Shabazz Muhammad, honestly, like even a step down from MKG. Like, jeez.
Like it
shows that even if you're like, no matter where you're ranked in class context and like how the previous class was, very important as well. And it was a rough class. Everybody felt it was a rough class. I remember the big Hoop Summit scrimmage they had there. Like this team lost quarters to what we called at the time. And this was not as decorated a team. They called them Club Sports Finest. They were later called the Portland Generals. I think, and that team wasn't necessarily like full of as much talent or like, full of like the next up and comer high school, like, Kevin Porter Jr. or anything like that. Like there was none of that. And they still beat them in scrimmages like a few quarter sessions, and yeesh, it was a rough go. And in the game, like some of the bigs just did nothing. I believe the only player outside of Shabazz who scores in double figures for the USA team is Kyle Anderson, slow-mo.
Yeah,
They were going to be set to be teammates that next year at UCLA. The big player that year from the game itself, Andrew Wiggins. And yeah, so it was rough. It was definitely rough. And I think those two guys probably would have been the favorite, which is kind of crazy when you think about it.
I don't really feel like, anyone else would have really made that.
Yeah. So I think Slow-Mo would have had a chance to enter the NBA draft out of high school. I know he plays 2 years at UCLA, but he was an intriguing guy. He was 6'9", 7'3" wingspan, so like legit like power forward size, and had some skill. Like, has some ball skills, has some passing ability. Is slow. That's the thing. He is called Slow-Mo. But yeah, athleticism a concern, but I think he would have probably had enough height. Isaiah Austin is another guy who I think might have been a prep to pro guy.
Yeah, I guess
as much as you worry about the body, and then you worry about the testing for the Marfans and everything like later on. But yeah, that would have been interesting, certainly. And he doesn't go to Hoop Summit, but I remember asking a guy who is now a general manager if there were any players that he wished were there, and the name that was brought up was Isaiah Austin. And Steven Adams, a guy I wish would have been at the Hoop Summit, but was not.
A personal favorite. So like I love Steven Adams, but again, probably
a Viseland personal favorite.
Yeah, probably pretty raw at the time. So probably like the college was probably
Viseland team favorite, let's say.
Yeah, he's awesome. Like I love Steven Adams on and off the court. I think he's hilarious, and he's just like he's a good tough player. Bennett's kind of raw.
Yeah, but I think Bennett has a chance. I think Alex Poitras, another guy who was very intriguing. Even early in his college career, you had people like, because it was a rough year.
Yeah.
People were kind of grasping at straws who the number one pick would be. And like early start, I remember Chad Ford giving Alex Poitras some love. I never really got that high on him.
It is, no matter how weak the class is, he still has to be number one. And someone's going to be the first pick. So like those are two things that are going to happen every year. But yeah, this was a pretty
Archie Goodwin. Yeah, you didn't let me finish. Archie Goodwin is another. DeJuan Coleman, who ends up going to Syracuse, I think, for the whole time. He could have very well had decided not to. And then the last guy I have who had a rough Hoop Summit, but still was somebody that was at least intriguing. And then after his freshman year, he plays well in the NCAA tournament. Mitch McGarry, who was way older than everybody in that Hoop Summit. And I remember a scout going like, he's like a year and a half older than some of these guys. I'm like, what the hell is he doing? Like, what are we seeing here? And but yeah, like still like 6'10", intriguing guy. And so it might have very well, like you're right. It was a rough year, but still like that's 10 guys.
Yeah,
it could have been fewer. But
guys definitely tested. I think the next year, I think we have like some strong people.
The next year it was certainly quite a step up in terms of like how they felt about prospects and how even like they played in the game, like for the most part. Andrew Wiggins was the guy.
Yeah, I think Wiggins.
So I think Andrew Wiggins still goes number one. Like I really do.
I think him versus Victor Oladipo in that spot, but I still think Wiggins.
No. I think Andrew Wiggins. I think there are three guys who I think surpass the hype of even like a Victor Oladipo. Out of that group of like high schoolers.
Wiggins, Jabari Parker.
Wiggins, Parker, Randall.
Julius Randall. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, those are pretty strong guys up top that were ready at the time.
Yeah. And I'm not even sure Parker. So I have it's funny because it's the Cavs and the Kings, and I have Why do I have the Kings? It's the Magic, right?
Magic had the second pick, yeah.
I'm a crackhead. Yeah. So yeah, Cavs, Magic. Let me make sure. Who was the third pick? Do you have that draft up? No, so Wizards. Yeah. Why did I have the Kings? I don't know. Yeah. So yeah, I'm not sure Jabari Parker goes too. Randall could have, but the guys that I had top three from that class were Wiggins, Parker, Randall. Aaron Gordon considered very highly among that class as well.
Athletic.
A guy who I think definitely could have taken the jump from prep to pro, but was raw and not considered necessarily in that class, and then boost way up freshman season. Like has intrigue through that All-Star circuit as well. Joel Embiid. I don't know if Joel Embiid, honestly, like if it's prep to pro, I don't know if Joel Embiid goes as high as those three guys. Like I think he still ends up going really high just based on like, you know,
he has so many raw but
physical attributes and like
I feel he
the definite skill and agility and everything there. But yeah, he was like, he was still raw. He was still raw. I don't know if people were as sold on Joel Embiid being in that group of guys, but I think he certainly could have been a guy that rose during that draft process, and might have been really tough to pass up on. But his improvement from that April to like his play at Kansas, like I felt like it was worlds.
Well, he was the kind of player you watch him. It's like he got better each time he ran up and down the court. Like you're like, who's this guy? And that's why like that next year, like when they actually were in college together, it's like, yeah, Wiggins wasn't the person you left the games talking about. You're talking about Embiid. Yeah. But yeah, I think like out of
we go per minute.
I think Jabari had a lot of hype associated with him as well because he had a
lot.
I
love him. I honestly like. I liked him as a person. Like I believed in his shooting. I probably should have looked more into defense and things like that because he had serious issues there. But man, like Duke, the guy could get buckets.
Yeah,
and I know some people were kind of worried about his body and like honestly like lateral quickness and like you know, just processing on defense and even as like a playmaker. But yeah, like there was a lot to love, and I love the attitude. Like that was the thing that won me over with him. Along with like I felt like he was very skilled. Like, and Julius was a guy who he goes up against like Clint Chapman in scrimmages, and like Clint like gives him a tough time. Like, and then in the game, like Livio John Charles kind of waxes him, and Julius still has a good game. But yeah, I felt like there were a few things to be a little bit concerned about, like him stretching the floor at all, and then so like floor spacing. But yeah, certainly a talented prospect and
like a big dude. You think
strong, very strong.
Roll than pick and pop.
Yeah, and that spin move like was still questionable. But yeah, he very talented player, and I think certainly would have been a very high pick as a prep to pro. So other possibilities: Joel Embiid. I'm going to throw in Dante Exum, who has a very good hoop summer game for the world team.
And I swear
you're redoing the age limit. He comes in with these guys.
And one of the commentators compared him to Michael Jordan, which is the worst possible thing you could do.
Who in the fuck compared to Michael Jordan?
Where it was like, go watch the game.
During the hoop summit?
Yeah, because he had a really good hoop summit.
He did, but like Dennis Schroeder like got the better of him in practices. And like it's like, yes, he was very good. The one comparison, honestly, like this is a step down from Michael Jordan because yeah, like the commentary, yeah, that's too much.
Cardi, I don't remember who it was.
God, I heard Penny Hardaway, and like I heard like scouts.
Yeah, because again, they were projecting him.
I just don't feel like the thing with Dante is I thought he was really, really quick. He didn't have the vertical athleticism of like either of them. So yeah, like he, and definitely not Michael Jordan. But yeah, that's interesting. I'm glad I wasn't watching the game.
Better to be there than
like, I'm glad I wasn't watching the game with commentary.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't think I would have bought that because I saw things with my eyes. But yeah, so Aaron Gordon I think would have been definitely a possibility. I think the twins Harrison would have been a possibility as well. Though I'll be honest with you, did not bowl people over during that Hoop Summit week, and I think there were some concerns there.
Reasons they are where they are now.
Yeah, and Andrew ends up having a good game, and Aaron does nothing in the game. But in practices, I thought Andrew was even worse than Aaron, and I didn't think either of them were doing well. But there was certainly some hype there. Noah Vonleh, intriguing guy. I think could have possibly been a prep to pro guy. Dakari Johnson, it's a bit of a stretch, but he had some hype back then as well, and was like a younger guy because he reclassifies. Chris Walker, another like athleticism, hoping for the best kind of deal. I wonder if like because of the level also he played out in high school, like I don't know, but there was a lot of hype there. James Young, physical attributes, scoring, like there was some intrigue. Casey Hill, old as hell. Doesn't play terribly, I feel, at the Hoop Summit practices, and like is all right, and certainly was hyped. Like I think he still, if he wasn't the number one rated point guard in that class, like he might have been just behind like Andrew Harrison. And then Wayne Selden is another one who classifies, and he was certainly strong, and I think that there was certain like some interest there. So that's 14 guys.
Jeez.
It's a much deeper class than.
Yeah, it's like so interesting to think about like how all those guys would have been thrown on.
Joel Embiid, boards. Ends up being the far and away the best player from that class. But yeah, and then shoot, like I guess, yeah. So Jokic enters that next year anyway. I just wonder if there's even enough hype for Jokic to enter in 2013, but you never know. Yeah. So let's move on to 2014. This is our second to last class, and this could be a crazy one. This is one where you're like, okay, maybe like it is kind of a good idea. Not that this guy ends up going much lower even in his draft. I'm not 100% confident that Jahlil Okafor goes number one. But if at the time I had to lean towards somebody who would go number one, it could very well be Jahlil.
Oh, because he was a post scorer. Like he post
yeah. And it still is. Let's be real. I was watching that New Orleans Sacramento game before this.
21 points. 9 of 11.
No, like, man, the thing I really liked about Jahlil, and maybe like this was because my brain was like in like, post meaning more than it actually did. I liked how quickly he got into his move, like once he got the ball. He just like, as soon as he felt that contact, like he would just, have like that move or have that counter. And he had his footwork offensively, or at least in the post, I shouldn't say offensively, in the post was impressive. I remember seeing he and Cliff Alexander doing drills. And at the time, like Cliff Alexander was considered one of the best players in that class as well, had just dominated. They actually played EYBL together. Their team, I think, was fairly mediocre because I'm not sure the guard play outside of them. But you have they were at the time considered 2 of the top 5 players in their class.
Oh, I wanted the Lakers to take Jahlil Okafor over.
Both Illinois guys too. Yeah, oh yeah. And Jahlil, in the 2015 draft, he was considered a huge possibility for number 2.
No, I remember a lot of my Laker friends being like, no, this you're gonna get the post guy.
Yeah.
At the center, that kind of thing, which obviously he never But yeah, totally. I think he probably, based on his scoring, I think Moutier as well.
Yeah, Moutier was the guy I liked the best after that Hoop Summit game. And so I have a soft spot for Karl Anthony Towns, and I feel like I made a terrible misjudgment on him as a player. Like I should have been much higher on him than I was, just because of everything that I saw. I was worried, like, I don't know why I was worried about his mobility so much. And he just, like, when it was between he and Jaleel, like in that game, like Jaleel got the better of him. Like I didn't necessarily see, I should have been more confident in his shooting, which I always felt like he would shoot. I just thought his post ability at the time wasn't great, but I should have looked at like all the other things that would have led him to being this like magnificent offensive player, like in that base, and like then him being like just in a different world as a defender than Jaleel. But Jaleel was considered like a ranked higher in that high school class. So I think ultimately I could see Karl Anthony Towns going higher than what he was ranked in RSCI, and I have him too in this draft, like in a hypothetical.
So you have Jaleel Okafor #1.
So I have Jaleel going to Cleveland at 1, and then I have and this is not with hindsight. This would have been like what I felt at the time, and that's with all of these picks. So like, yeah, like hypothetical, given no look into the future. And I think Cat might have gone second, but the three guys I think who would have been likely in the running, maybe you can add 4 with Emmanuel Moutier. But I think it would have gone to the 3 big men, and it would have been Jaleel, it would have been Karl Anthony Towns, the third guy, Miles Turner.
Yeah.
Miles Turner, like, skyrockets up that high school class as well. At the Hoop Summit, I'm very worried about his mobility as well. Like, Kat and Miles both have like these size 22 shoes, and Miles just runs so weird and like has injury concerns also, and like I think misses like a little bit of practice due to injuries, and just didn't love the way that he moved. But certainly like was a talent and had like some shooting touch as well. And yeah, I should have been able to see that he was a much better defensive prospect than Jaleel Okafor as well. But yeah, Jaleel was just a guy that I felt like the offense was going to work. He had this really long wingspan, and I didn't think like his inability to move in space. And I guess the other thing I didn't really see or wasn't looking hard enough for were the defensive instincts.
Yeah, I think like that's what also like prevents
end up being a huge issue for his NBA career. But yeah, I think I seriously, like, I think that Jaleel Okafor, like, there's a good chance that if you're going from prep to pro that year, he might be the favorite for #1. I know at the very least, Jerry Meyer, I know, ranked him lower than everybody else, but I think almost everybody else like had him 1 or 2. So yeah, I think Karl Anthony Towns likely is very intriguing and has 2 great Hoop Summit performances under his belt, like in practices, and like I interviewed him and loved him. Like I still say he's like the best interview I've ever had. And I think NBA people were very impressed with his attitude and also his ability.
yeah.
And I think he's a case where NBA guys were higher on him than the RSCI. Other possibilities. So yeah, Emmanuel, I think absolutely, because
He didn't even
yeah, Lord knows he goes to China, and then I think prime prep back then would have been like straight to the NBA factory basically.
Yeah.
And so yeah, Stanley Johnson has a nice Hoop Summit and strong. He's a guy that I'm still surprised doesn't end up being a better player. Like, I think certainly like
Yeah,
his skill set and everything might have been a little behind, but yeah, you thought you saw like work ethic and
to me, it
really
comes
good
down to
things there.
the list of the many players that chose not to go to Oregon. They could
That's
have had a
true.
better life, but you want to
Oregon's runner-up.
Arizona.
Kelly Oubre. Kelly Oubre is a guy who I think NBA teams were very intrigued by, and would have been likely a higher pick as a prep to pro than even after a year of college. Rashad Vaughn, I think people were also like still pretty intrigued by as well. Both those guys are Finley guys. Trey Lyles has a nice hoop summit. Like I think through the All-Star circuit, like people saw him as one of the top like high school kind of like big guys. Justice Winslow, not sure he goes, but I another guy very intriguing. Like already has the body, and I think like some very good intel there as well. Plus comes from NBA pedigree with his father Ricky. Kevon Looney, another guy, 6'9", 7'3" wingspan.
The crazy thing, his freshman
Kevin Durant comparisons, like
kind of like it's so funny because like they played together in Golden State, and
yeah,
no one mistook them for twins.
no.
And also, Kevin Looney's kind of like more of a center role. Obviously,
It was back when anybody who was like near 6'10" with like a long wingspan who like shot even close to a bit was considered Kevin Durant.
But yeah, but like, didn't
Chris McCullough.
Chris
McCullough, I think would have been a guy that might have thought about doing that and going prep to pro. Gets hurt at Syracuse, so that's unfortunate. And then the other guy, I leave out. I think Tyus would have gone to college. Like I'm not sure if I know Tyus certainly had like some. Tyus Jones had some.
Great point there, but I think I think he doesn't have things that like jump at you.
Yeah,
which is like why
I'm not sure
his, like,
NBA teams would have like loved Tyus straight out of high school. And then Isaiah Whitehead was a guy who I know plays really well at Adidas Nations that year before. I didn't go, but I watched like the scrimmages on TV, and I think there was some intrigue there just as a scoring guard. I don't think like lottery or anything like that, but he might have been a guy that would have thought of doing that. So that puts it at 13 guys. Finally, 2015. This is an interesting one.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We're ending with like a class that you're like, oh, should they have this, or should we let guys go straight to the NBA, or should we not? And then we're kind of ending on an interesting note. Like Ben Simmons was and is always that kind of guy. I think he still is a top pick.
I agree with you.
I think everybody else.
However, this is a big however. Having gone to Hoop Summit that year, I think legitimately, like, it would have really depended on whose team and whose management had the number one pick. And I go with Ben Simmons, and I still come out of that Hoop Summit with Ben Simmons as my number one guy. A lot of people, and I even heard NBA guys. So yeah, RSCI has Ben Simmons number one, but it's close.
Oh yeah, someone else gets a couple number ones,
and that is Skal Labissiere.
Yeah,
now, Ben Simmons is number one by 1 point, so it's 595, 594 in the RSCI, and man, there were people that were really high on Skal Labissiere. So I'm lucky enough to, I'm not living in Portland at the time, but I get to Portland early, and like I make sure I'm there for all the practices. And after that first practice, I remember Draft Express had Jaylen Brown number one over Ben Simmons to begin with. After that first practice, with Jonathan Givony not even there, Mike Schmitz, I guess, making the call, and then Jonathan agreeing like later on, and maybe they had seen him earlier, they move Skal Labissiere to number one after that first practice. I know Evan Daniels has him number one, like, because he writes, like, as soon as he gets there that next day, he's like, Scala this year has been the best guy here, like, and there's like no other person there. He actually is wondering about even having Ben Simmons number two, I overhear later on that week. He never said off the record, I'm sorry. But I still feel like Ben Simmons probably goes to Minnesota at number one here. But yeah, it could have really depended. And I'll tell you about Scott Labissiere. And so he has a really like weird last year of high school where he doesn't play for a high school. They like kind of like make up this school and just surround him. Like, I don't even know if he was like surrounded by other people that were like close to his level of talent, but he plays this national schedule and he plays like against Oak Hill and they lose by like 40, but he looks great. Like, you know, he's just like, he's killing it. This Scal, like, just aesthetically, that jump shot looks really nice. Like, he gets like so much elevation for a guy that size. And then he gets matched up against Thon Maker and like takes him to town the entire week. Like, it was not even, it wasn't a fair matchup. And they're each listed at 7 feet. Scal's clearly an inch or so shorter than Thon. But I think Thon was listed at 218 and Scal was listed at 216. There's like, you look at the biceps and everything, like there's no way that guy weighs more than Scal Labissiere, or at least like strength wise, like it's just, it doesn't really show. So yeah, he's in a great situation. And then he has a great game too. And it just seemed to, he seemed to know where to be on the court. He seemed to have that hunger and a very intriguing ability. Yeah, like honestly, after that Hoop Summit, it was hard to be low on Scal Labissiere. He looked very intriguing. And I did hear a scout, like, you know, we were talking with scouts. I heard an NBA scout that had him number one going into that preseason.
Jeez,
so like had him one.
Like, how different that would be. You have him being the number 1 or 2 pick in the.
Yeah. So like Scal likely goes, if he's not, okay, let's say he doesn't go 1 or 2. I don't think he's getting out of that top 5.
Yeah. Like that
would have been a reach. Like with everything going. And you know, I'm sure I think there are still people that went to that Hoop Summit that probably will ride for Scala Labissiere until the day they die. And it, like, yeah, I'm not sure that they won't say like, oh, like, let's say he goes prep to pro, like maybe in a different situation, like things work out differently. But yeah, 2 other guys who would have been high draft picks. And so the top 4, I think by most recruiting rankings, like after this, you have Ben Simmons, Scal Labissiere. It's hard to rank them. I like 3 or 4, but Brandon Ingram, Jaylen Brown.
Yeah,
I think I might have even had Jaylen Brown over Brandon Ingram. But yeah, it's they're neck and neck. Now, as far as other players, the guy who had the best game in the Hoop Summit, I feel, Ben Simmons does almost have a triple-double, but that Jamal Murray guy, I think he would have had a chance to go prep to pro. Scores 30 points in that Hoop Summit game.
I think after the Hoop Summit, I think he put himself on
like,
that map where he should have been.
Kills those USA guards.
Yeah.
And also like plays like a national high school schedule, and like, you know, Thon Maker, I don't think would have been even eligible at this time, I guess. Like, or I guess he would have.
He would have. He would have graduated. Jamal, that was
like he certainly, like, yeah, he was 97. So yeah, he probably could have been. I think he might have taken another year, but who knows? He could have been a guy that would have entered his name. But yeah, I don't have Thon listed here because Thon does end up going back to high school that next year. Ivan Rabb, who does not set the world on fire at the Hoop Summit, and I think there were some concerns, but still was a highly rated high school player. And I think would have gone fairly high even after his freshman year, but decides to go back and goes significantly lower. Sheck Diallo was a guy who I think would have gone pretty high. And he very raw, but like movement and defense and physical tools. Diamond Stone, I don't know. He did really well at youth levels for like USA teams and was a big guy. Malik Newman, a lot of high school hype for Malik Newman.
Yeah,
considered by some to be like the number one player in the class, like as like a sophomore and junior. It gets a little less so as a senior, but still some intrigue there. Henry Ellenson, I'm not sure, but like there were people that were intrigued by Henry Ellenson, and even like that next year. One guy who I think the intrigue dies down a lot on, but like if you're looking at the time and then at the Hoop Summit, I don't think like sets the world on fire or during that All-Star circuit, but is tall and had some hype behind him. Steven Zimmerman.
Yeah, big guy,
who wins the MVP of the Nike Global Challenge that I go to the year before as well, where NBA scouts were there, and like does well at different camps. Isaiah Briscoe, they win the EYBL Peach Jam, and doesn't set the world on fire at Hoop Summit, or I don't think really in the All-Star circuit, but he's another possibility. Alonzo Trier, I think, would have taken a long, hard look.
Oh, he would have. Yeah, I don't think he was.
And he is very hyped, like as like a 12-year-old. Like I think they write like a New York Times article about him, and then like kind of makes his way back up the high school rankings. Also, look at that last shot of the Nike Hoop Summit. Sorry, Alonzo, but yeesh. Yeah, Jamal Murray got very lucky there because I remember like, oh, he was having such a great game, but I think he like turns it over. Or there was some play at the end where he gives them the USA team a chance to win. One guy, he makes a late reclassification. A lot of hype to him as well. Derek Thornton.
Oh, yeah.
I think people were a lot higher on Derek Thornton as a high school prospect than as a college prospect. I don't know if the NBA was as high, but that's my list, and that's 14 guys as well. So it never gets above like 15 guys. In real life, like if this were to happen, I'm sure there would have been names that would have come out of the woodwork, and there would have been guys who might have been interested. But all in all, like we feel that if anything, like it's kind of weird. Like so for a while, when at the start of prep to pro, guys are getting like hilariously underdrafted.
Yeah.
And then after a while, some of them are getting overdrafted.
Overdrafted because you're hoping he could have that potential.
Yeah. And I don't even think like it was like horrendously overdrafted, but like some went higher than they should have.
Yeah, because you want.
I think as you see here, there would have been a few that definitely should have gone or would have gone higher than they should have. And it's tough, but is it like catastrophic? And like I feel like people almost put too much into the RSCI as like through MBA goggles as it is through like high school evaluator goggles that certainly take the MBA into account, but aren't necessarily like MBA people. Like you see the difference even between like ESPN's high school rankings and ESPN's like future mock drafts.
Yeah. And
the NBA like has some different ways of looking at it. I still feel like even like, if Zion Williamson like doesn't go, let's say RJ Barrett goes number 1 in 2018, if they go prep to pro, I'm not sure Zion doesn't go 2 or 3. Like he still goes really, really high. And I'm not sure he doesn't go 1. Like I think like maybe just people are just so blown away by him and his athleticism and like that those rare tools that as much as RJ was seen as like, the number 1 guy, like the NBA might have viewed it differently.
And
So yeah, we're not sure, but we'd like to be sure, and we'd like to see it happen. And we know that apparently it's 2022 was supposed to be the year. Now it's looking like maybe 2023. Now it's looking like maybe them kind of sticking with the way it is and going with testing out the G League development program and getting a year of that. It's always going. It would be tough to evaluate high school players. Like you don't even draft Twitter for as smart as they are, and NBA people and everything. Like your high school rankings don't look exactly like your NBA draft rankings do that next year. you're bound to make some mistakes.
There's a lot of developmental things, and there's a lot of things you learn through this process. I still think the NBA should bring it back.
Yeah,
allow for that. I mean,
I think the upside is a lot more so than the downside. I feel.
No, totally. And honestly,
we saw the amount of success that, like overall, the players who went from prep to pro, like most of them, like on the vast majority. Of course, there are cases that didn't do as well, and if you have to kind of like know where you're going to get drafted and everything like that. But yeah.
And I'm honestly I'm okay with them, like the NBA even like instituting like a modified version of what they do for college baseball, where it's like you can get drafted, then you could, like, if you're not happy with that.
No, stop it. Stop.
But I mean, I think it's okay. Like if you don't get drafted, at all, you should be able to go to college.
Oh yeah. That I agree with. But like on the fucking like if you get drafted out of high school and you don't like it, then you have to do like 3 years of college.
No, 3 years. I'd say modified for basketball. Like you at least have to do like 2 years. I don't know.
No.
It's not for me anyway. That was just.
You know what, Jason? No.
There's a reason they're not asking me for these things. But like, no, I definitely think they need to bring it back. I think it's just.
I disagree with you on that one.
I just think they need to let the guys play. Like I think there are a lot of these.
Oh yeah, it would be nice if college like just wasn't so hardlined on everything and their rules and like, and hey, you do the monologue from Blue Chips where he's like, I don't know about the rules, but they're there and I like them and blah 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 blah. Like it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. And we're realizing more and more how absurd it is. And as much as like, I always said the one and done was like a guilty pleasure, but like I never saw much of a purpose in it. Like I loved seeing guys get that year of college and then like being more ready like after that year. But like, you wonder if even if they have that like 1 year, like what it would do for their development. Like you never know.
No, totally. Like let them just like if they do legitimately want to go to school, that's cool. But like I don't know, forcing them to like pretend for some of them, it's just like what's the point?
Oh, yeah. And again, like we're assuming here too, and like this is what the one and done, and why I feel like people with like the whole like one and done's ruining college basketball thing, like.
No,
there are so few people that go one and done, and there would be so few people that go prep to pro.
Yeah, it's making college. If anything, it's making college basketball better because you're seeing guys in the NCAA you would never see.
Yeah, and if you're gonna blame like 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 people see people going like from high school to the NBA and just all think they can do that, like that's just silly. And I know there were cases of guys that like went from high school to the NBA and like the NBA had like no interest and everything like that, like.
Yeah, but then there's also
that was definitely like there weren't many of those.
And then there's also guys that are ranked very high in high school, go to college, end up circumstantial things that never really flourish in the make the NBA or flourish, where they honestly could have probably been a higher pick. Had they gone straight from high school.
Yeah, for sure.
They have that potential, and then they go to college. Things could happen, or their development gets stunted in some capacity. So it's like, let them do what they need to do.
Yeah. It's always funny to me when they say like a guy like after his freshman year like doesn't go out and then like his draft stock drops and they're like, oh man, he should have left after his freshman year. It's like, I guess so, but like his longevity in the league, like how would that have looked? Like
Yeah.
the team would have been screwed. But yeah.
With the guaranteed contract of the first round picks, but
and like also the other thing that I will do, like as soon as they announce they're doing this, like they're eliminating the age limit or redoing the age limit to 18 instead of 19 or a year after your high school class graduates, we will do a mock draft, and it is going to be cool to have two high school classes next to each other.
Like a double,
yeah. Like, you know, where 2006 was like that weak draft because it didn't have like the heft of the high school players, and also the unfortunate like fact that the 2005 high school class wasn't great. So yeah, like the whatever draft has these two high school classes going together, where it's like the one and done guys and the high school guys, like that.
So start trading those future picks now and start trying to slowly tank your team.
Yeah.
Years, and if you can rig the lottery, New York, go for it. I wish you the best.
Yeah. Indeed.
But that was our thoughts on, you know, who are those guys, you know, from the one and done era that, you know, would have gone placed in the draft. So if you have anybody that you think, you know, would have been someone that we missed out on, or you think someone like we thought would have gone high school to pros that you think should have, you know, was better off staying in college, let us know. Drop us a comment. Also, you can also send us an email, viselandpod@gmail.com. We're on Apple, Spotify. We're here on YouTube as well. Like, subscribe, share. Thank you so much for everyone that subscribed, left a comment. We appreciate all those comments.
Yeah, and you can follow me at NBA Draft Mike TV on Twitter. You can follow Jason at Visenberg. You did say you can email us at viselandpod@gmail.com.
Also follow us on Twitter at Viseland. We are
please
every Wednesday, so definitely come check us out, and we look forward to seeing you next time. And if you have any comments, concerns, drop them there in the comments. Thank you guys so much.